Hi, this is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle, and today we're going to work on a reel that I previewed the other day. This is a Shakespeare reel. It comes as part of a combination. It's a little fashion industry starter kind of a reel. It's kind of meant for rivers, lakes, pier fishing. It's about a 30 size reel, 20 or 30 size reel. Yeah, it's a 30 size here. It's called a Rainbow. It was sold in a combination, and we just did a reel. It was kind of like this one. It was the Tsunami Bracer. That one didn't have a lot of good fortune to it. It came back to the distributor because it was broken, and probably broken at the time of assembly. But these serve a purpose. They're a great introductory reel. They're great for freshwater or inshore bays and inlets and the like. And we're going to take it apart. We'll show you what it's made of. More importantly, we're going to tune this thing up, and we're going to get it to go fishing again. So what I like to do during the disassembly period is to thank our first responders and essential personnel for everything it is that they're doing during the pandemic to help keep us safe. And your efforts truly are appreciated, regardless of what role or position it is. It's very important to all that you continue to do your job, and we are thankful for it. So let's do this. We're going to take this reel off. Now, most of the time, these reels have reversible handles. In this case, this is a molded piece of a case. It does not have a reversible handle. You're just simply going to remove the handle by turning in a clockwise direction. That'll take the handle off. In this case, we'll take the spool off by removing the spool adjuster knob or drag tensioner knob. And from the lower price reels, these drag washers are pretty much molded into the case. You're not going to get those out, but typically on a reel like this, you're not going to use the drags much. Those are all going into a parts tray where I keep all my pieces and parts that I take off, so I know where to find them later. We have a couple of little shim washers below. That's going to hold the spool on. Notice the sequence on that. I always like to suggest, if you are working on a reel, particularly if that reel does not have schematics, that you go ahead and you take pictures along the way so that you know where those pieces and parts go should you get lost. And it's real easy to get lost. So there you go. This is another example of how manufacturers save a couple of pennies here and there. This is a magnetic screw, which means it's a steel screw, as opposed to a stainless steel screw, which is non-magnetic. The stainless steel screw is less prone to rust than the steel ones are, but if you save a nickel here and a nickel there, that's how you deliver an entry-level reel, as opposed to the more expensive kinds. So with that, we're going to remove the nut for your spool. I'm going to use a Mitchell tool to do that. This comes off in a traditional clockwise direction. You could use a 12mm wrench, you could use a deep socket, or in this case, as I mentioned, I have this little Mitchell tool, which happens to be a 12mm deep socket. So we've just taken that off. You should be able to pull up, and this is pretty straightforward in terms of an anti-reverse now. There's not a lot going on here. There's a simple anti-reverse over switch. You'll see it on the bottom here. If you pull that up, it's going to allow you to free spool in either direction. And if you set it back, it's going to lock it in. In this case, this spring is not working on this one. We'll make that happen. But there you can see the lock. Oh, there we go. Just needed a little bit of effort there to get that done. We'll spray that down. I'm sure that's all it is at this point. It's a little bit of WD-40 just to get that thing to loosen up, and that'll make it all better. Okay, let's go over to the non-handle side. There's 3 screws here we're going to remove to see what's going on underneath. These are Phillips head screws. And it's important, whether you're working on an entry-level reel like this or if you're working on something more significant, to note where the pieces and parts come from and how they come out. This one's got kind of a double You can use a flat-bladed or a Phillips head. Seems like the Phillips head was skipping a little bit, so we're going to go ahead and use the flat blade screw driver for removal. Okay, take that one off. And my guess is that this this rod and reel set was under $20. It's kind of targeted for freshwater lake fishing, smaller game fish, nothing of any significance, more to teach a person how to get the line in the water and how to go fishing. So there's 3 screws here. They're all the same size, so I'm going to put those into my parts tray. Now we should just be able to lift that case up and just checking to see what makes this little lever go here. This is the anti-reverse lever. There's a little spring there that's operating that. When you're in override mode, it won't allow that spring to jump. And when you come back, there we go. We kind of got it toggling now. You're going to just put a little bit of grease onto that, just to make sure that a little bit of oil, just to make sure that it does it on a consistent basis. Not a very tight spring. That's kind of interesting. All right, we have an old design here. This almost goes back to a Mitchell 304, for example. You pull the pin and just leave that on the table here because we're not going far. You pull your axle shaft out. You remove your crosswind block. Then you have a little slip here. It's a U-shaped clip, so there's no bearings in here. I wouldn't expect to find a bearing in this reel. But this design has been around a very long time. You can see the U-shaped clip, which is holding the pinion gear in. That's your pinion gear. And now we can push the main gear through. So there's a lot going on in this reel for the time that's in there. And this is why we're kind of having that failure with the anti-reverse override. That spring is off there. So we'll go get that back on. That spring is going to ride on the back of the main gear like this. And I believe it's held in with this like that. And when you turn, it needs to line up and be in the slot here. I also think I have it on backwards. In fact, I know I have it on backwards. So you want that spring facing over the top when you go to do this. So it's interesting. They got a lot of features in this reel for a low-cost reel. So what happened was this thing obviously came loose, and no big problem there. All right, I'm just going to take the dirt off of the face of the gear. Put some fresh grease on that. Get it into the teeth that are going to drive the rest of this. And then we'll go up top here, we'll inspect this. This is kind of all-in-one assembly here. It's a basic metal, like we call it pot metal. I'm not quite sure what it is. You'll see in the case itself that we have a bushing here. The bushing is on this piece, on this one. And the back side here we have nothing, which is not atypical of the construction. All right, we have that anti-reverse spring now properly mounted, holding in with the washer facing outward. Just get a little bit of grease onto the shaft here. I'm going to go ahead and install this by putting this into, you got to merge this 2 ways. You got to go down and you got to get it into that slot in that anti-reverse. Alright, I'm going to put that handle on now just so we can test that, and also hold that main gear in place. Because this is an eccentric that's going to be driven by the spring. So as you're rolling around, you're going to be fine. It's pulling in, and as soon as you go to back up, you can see how it's moving it in and out now. So that spring is back on proper. Good. Okay. Alright, we'll grab that pinion gear that goes through the top. Make sure it's seated so that you have the slot where you can put your clip. Your clip comes in from underneath. And our axle shaft, you want to make sure that's clean. So there's not a lot of moving parts, but as far as a low entry wheel goes, I think this one's much better than the other one we just saw there in terms of the Tsunami. I wasn't happy with that one at all. Not only was it broken, but it just seemed like the materials were even less than I would expect for something like that. Okay, this one I believe goes in the down position. Nope, goes in the up position. We're going to test that. I see this is a good place where you look for your pictures, because I didn't note very well which way that one went. You come in, you line up the hole. I think we're going to have this one backwards. My guess is it's got to go this way. Now we'll line it up, hole to hole, and that should make it work. We want to take the pin that we've left, merge that pin into the hole. We'll give it a ride now, making sure that we're all right. Here we go. So that's the proper alignment there. And go ahead and put that back plate on. Those 3 screws. And go back up top and finish that piece off. So overall, it's interesting. I mean, Shakespeare is one of the oldest fishing reel companies in existence. It's now part of that Pure Fishing, but Shakespeare started all the way back in the late 1800s. And Shakespeare is known for their early bait casting reels, which were kind of invented, or at least the level line feature on it was invented by William Shakespeare. He was out of Kalamazoo, Michigan, and it's survived an awful lot of time, right? It's 120 plus years old, 130 years old probably. I think, if I remember, the patent on the one was 1898, so it's still in existence today. It's been purchased by Pure Fishing, which is a conglomerate. They own Penn Reels and Abu Garcia and Shakespeare and Pfluger and Berkeley and all kinds of brands. Mitchell, I think they own Mitchell. I believe they just acquired Finor and Van Staal. So they've been very active in buying up brands. Some of them have not continued in the tradition that maybe they had before they became part of Pure Fishing. Pure Fishing has got a strategy, good, better, best kind of a thing, and certain brands are relegated to the lower end of the scale and some of them to the higher end scale. Of course, their flagship brand for a long time was Penn Reels, and they still do make a quality Penn reel there. But some of the others, people will say, gee, it's a Mitchell, but it's nothing like the Mitchell I had. Well, those are long gone days. I think you got the Mitchell brand, but you don't have much more. All right, those little screws are a little bit tough, and that's one of the problems with a steel-headed screw that just kind of sits in an environment for a while. All right, a couple of good pokes to my finger will remind me about that. We'll take our bail assembly. We're going to put that up top now. That's got the screw that came off, or the nut that came off, in the counterclockwise direction, so it goes back on in a clockwise direction. We've got a little wrench here, which we're going to use to tighten that up. Again, if you don't have that, just a simple 12mm wrench. You don't have much of a lip here, you should be able to grab it with that. If you can't grab it with the 12mm wrench, use a socket. That'll do well. This is kind of a unique approach on the little click mechanism that when your reel is spooling, you'll hear a click. We have the spool back on now. Oops, we got one more thing we got to do here. There's that little tie-down screw that I was telling you about from a magnetic standpoint. Let's go ahead and put that one back in so that the rotor nut doesn't slip. And then we'll go ahead and put that spool back on, put the cap back on, give it a twirl, and find a deserving young child for this reel. Get this one going fishing again. There you go. Oh, piece of cake. Works nicely. Check the bail. That trips. You do want to make sure that the bail gets oiled. Work it in. Probably been a while since this one was used. There you go. I'm hitting the high point when I'm going to set this thing for casting. That's why it's kind of jamming there. That's all right. All right, there you go. That's the Shakespeare Rainbow 30 size reel. It's a nice entry-level reel. We saw there's nothing, no shortcuts there. The product is made nicely. It's, I think, more than I expected to see when I opened up this reel, it being an entry-level reel. So I hope you've enjoyed it. If you did, please like it. If you want to see more, please subscribe. And if you do subscribe, please hit the notification button, as that'll show you all of the videos I'm working on and when they're published. And if you have a question, please leave it in the comment section. Again, if you're a first responder or essential personnel, thank you for all it is that you're doing. For the rest of us, let's do our part in terms of maintaining our distance, staying safe, wearing our masks, and doing those other great things that we've come to do in response to the pandemic. And with that, I'm going to wish you a great day. This is Dennis for Second Chance Tackle. Thank you for watching.